Jai Radha Madhava, Jai Kunja Bihari, Jai Radha Madhava, Jai Kunja Bihari, Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha, Jai Girivardhari, Jai Girivardhari, Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana, Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana, Shamunatira Vanachari. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Om Jnana-timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamaya Dadati Swapadantikam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Shakatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radhakanta Namaste Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhescha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavinebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, welcome to today's session. So we are going to be reading Analogy 14 of the Light of the Bhagavat as given by Srila Prabhupada, the founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. The lightning becomes unsteady in its friendship, failing to remain faithfully in one of the clouds. Although they are the friend of the entire world, just as a lusty women do not remain steady even in the company of men who possess excellent qualities. Or we can say, just as lusty men do not remain steady even in the company of women who possess excellent qualities. So it works both ways, devotees, for either men or women, because in Kali Yuga, it's more so, it's so degraded that, everyone is basically implicated in this lust. So let's read the purport and see what Prabhupada has to say here. During the rainy season, lightning appears in one group of clouds and then immediately in another group of clouds. This phenomenon is compared to a lusty woman or man who does not fix her mind or his mind, on one person. A cloud is compared to a qualified person because it pours rain and gives sustenance to many people. A man who is qualified similarly gives sustenance to many living creatures, such as family members or many workers in business. Unfortunately, his whole life can be disturbed by a wife who divorces him. When the husband is disturbed, the whole family is ruined, the children are dispersed, or the business is closed, and everything is affected. It is therefore recommended that a woman desiring to advance in Krishna consciousness peacefully live with a husband, and that the couple should not separate under any condition. The husband and wife should control sex indulgence and concentrate their minds on Krishna consciousness so their lives may be successful. After all, in the material world, a man requires a woman and a woman requires a man. When they are combined, they should live peacefully in Krishna consciousness and should not be restless, like the lightning flashing from one group of clouds to another. So we'll just try to say something on this verse and analogy, actually. But before we do that, let's read from the Bhagavad Gita. And the Bhagavad Gita explains very nicely about this concept of lust. So the verse in the Bhagavad Gita goes as follows. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha, Kama Krodha Kama es Sa Krodha Esa Raja Guna Samudbhavaha Mahashano Mahapapa Vidhi Inam Iha Vedinam. Translation: the personality of God, it said, it is lust only, Arjuna, which is born of contact with the material mode of passion and later transformed into wrath, and which is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. When a living entity comes in contact with the material creation, his eternal love for Krishna is transformed into lust in association with the mode of passion. Or in other words, the sense of love of God becomes transformed into lust as milk is in contact with sour tamarind is transformed into yogurt. Then again, when the lust is unsatisfied, it turns into wrath, and wrath is transformed into illusion, and illusion continues the material existence. Therefore, lust is the greatest enemy of the living entity, and it is lust only which induces the pure living entity to remain entangled in the material world. So what's being explained here in this paragraph is that when we fall from the spiritual sky, when we come in contact with this material nature, then the love for God, love for Krishna Prem that we had in the spiritual world transforms into lust, because we come in contact with the modes of material nature, and then we have these three gunas: ignorance, passion, and goodness. And this is how this lust is transformed, right? The pure love is transformed into lust. Therefore, lust is the greatest enemy of the living entity, and it is lust only which induces the pure living entity to remain entangled in the material world. Wrath is the manifestation of the mode of ignorance. These modes exhibit themselves as wrath and other corollaries. If therefore the mode of passion, instead of being degraded into the mode of ignorance, is elevated to the mode of goodness by the prescribed method of living and acting, then one can be saved from the degradation of wrath by spiritual attachment. So here Prabhupada is saying that we should transform this lust into love. Now we may just use this word loosely, I love you, this, that, but it's not love, it's actually lust. This is what Prabhupada is saying, that it's not lust, it's not love, it's just lust, right? So the Supreme Personality of Godhead expanded himself into many for his ever-increasing spiritual bliss, and the living entities are part and parcel of the spiritual bliss. They also have partial independence, but by misuse of their independence, when the service attitude is transformed into the propensity for sense enjoyment, they come under the sway of lust. This material creation is created by the Lord to give facility to the conditioned souls to fulfill these lustful propensities. And when completely baffled by prolonged lustful activities, the living entities begin to inquire about their real position. So yes, devotees, we come to this material world to enjoy. We want this and we want that, and we go to the temple and the church and mosque and pray that we want all these things just to satisfy our cravings, our lust. This inquiry in the beginning of the Vedas, Vedanta Sutra, wherein it is said, Athato Brahma Jigyase, one should inquire into the Supreme, and the Supreme is defined in the Srimad Bhagavatam as Janmari Asya Yataha Yatanvaya Itaritascha, or the origin of everything is the Supreme Brahman. Therefore, the origin of lust is also the Supreme. If therefore lust is transformed into love for the Supreme, or transformed into Krishna consciousness, or in other words, desiring everything for Krishna, then both lust and wrath can be spiritualized. Hanuman, the great servitor of Lord Ram, exhibited his wrath by burning the golden city of Ravan. But by doing so, he became the greatest devotee of the Lord. Here also in the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord induces Arjun to engage in wrath upon his enemies. So the satisfaction of the Lord. Thus lust and wrath, when they are employed in the service of in Krishna consciousness, becomes our friend instead of our enemy. So yes, devotees, this lust that is in the material world, it's not only due to sexual contact, but also for desiring things that we want for our own sense gratification, like a nice house, a nice car, like this. So these are all things that to increase the propensity of our lust. So that we'll go on to the next verse where Prabhupada says, as fire is covered by smoke and a mirror covered by dust, or as the embryo is covered by the womb, the living entity is similarly covered by different degrees of this lust. So yes, so we'll just try to explain these concepts to you, where Prabhupada is he will speak in the purport about this, where the fire is covered by smoke, right? The mirror covered by dust, and the embryo covered by the womb. So he says in this purport, we're not going to read the whole purport because it's going to take a lot of time. So I'll just explain these concepts to you. So firstly, the fire covered by smoke. He says it is likened to the living entities, right? Who had a slight degree, who can, to a slight degree, use their intelligence to question, why am I suffering in this material world, right? So when they question like this, then Krishna provides the answer for them, and then they come in contact with the devotee and they make their advancement in Krishna consciousness to get out of this world, right? So that is a fire covered by smoke. So this is this lust is to a slight degree. It's not as like a mirror covered by dust, because a mirror covered by dust is likened to animals, birds and beasts, where they are more covered over, right? And then we go on to the embryo covered by the womb. So first, let's just talk about the animals, birds and beasts. They're covered over. So the intelligence is a little broader, but not so much as the living entity, as the human beings, because they can reason. They can, to some degree, they have feelings. They can think and they can act in certain ways according to their propensity and nature. So like we say, birds of a feather flock together. So they have this instinct or this intuition. So they are covered by lust to a broader degree than the human beings. And then we go on to the next one, which is the embryo covered by the womb. So this is likened to trees, plants, like that, because their intelligence is covered by such a degree that they are almost devoid of consciousness, because their lust is greater, right? So the trees just stand there, in all weather condition, and they cannot retaliate. They just have to accept everything that comes their way. So in this way, their consciousness is very low as well. So, so this is what Prabhupada is explaining in the purport here. So let's just read a part of it, right, of this purport and see. So the embryo covered by the smoke is an analogy illustrating a helpless position, for the child in the womb is so helpless that it cannot even move. This stage of living condition can be compared to that of trees, and the trees are also living entities, but they have been put in such a condition of life by such a great exhibition of lust that they are almost devoid of all consciousness. The covered mirror is compared to the birds and beasts, and the smoke covered fire is compared to the human beings. In the form of the human being, the living entity may revive a little Krishna consciousness, and if he makes further development, the fire of spiritual life can be kindled in the human form of life. By careful handling of the smoke and fire, fire can be made to blaze. Therefore, the human form of life is a chance for the living entity to escape the entanglement of material existence. In the human form of life, one can conquer the enemy lust by cultivation of Krishna consciousness under able guidance. So yes, so when the living entity comes in contact with the spiritual master, a bona fide spiritual master, he can actually come out of this entanglement of this material world. And then the next verse, Prabhupada further expands. He says, this is 39, text 39, thus the living entity's pure consciousness becomes covered by his eternal enemy in the form of lust, which is never satisfied and which burns like fire. So Prabhupada in this purport, he is saying that actually in the Manusmriti, lust cannot be satisfied by any amount of sense gratification, just as fire cannot be extinguished by a constant supply of fuel. If you keep adding fuel to the fire, it will blaze, right? And so similarly, Prabhupada compares that sense gratification is like fuel, right? You're adding fuel to the fire. So the more we engage in sense gratification, the more chances is there of our lust becoming set ablaze like a fire, right? So then Prabhupada says in the Srimad Bhagavatam, this term Methunadi Agara, right? And this is Methunadi is actually sex enjoyment of the living entity. And then Prabhupada goes on to further say that he gives the analogy of criminals where they're kept behind bars, you know, so basically criminals are kept behind bars. And he says those who are disobedient to the laws of God are shackled by sex life. So although this material world don't have any bars, it doesn't have any gates to keep us imprisoned here, but by this shackle of sex life, becoming more and more entangled in the complexities of sex indulgence and acquiring more and more sense gratification or more and more amenities for our sense gratification. So in this way, we become shackled by sex life. Srila Prabhupada says that so-called materialistic advancement is another means of keeping us bound in this world because it just increases our lustful propensities, right? And therefore, Prabhupada says simple living and high thinking. Now, when Maharaj Lokanath Swami was here, he gave an example of a devotee who wanted a bigger house, and he thought that having a big house would be nice. And then he approached Maharaj and he asked him, like, should I get a bigger house? And Maharaj says, no, this place is sufficient. Live simply and worship Krishna. That's all you need to do. Bigger house means working harder. And, you are thinking, oh, because my friend has a big house, therefore I should get a big house as well. So this is just, like a competition. You're having competition right? Who gets the best thing? Who big, I want one, I want what's yours, and I want what's better than what you have. So this is just due to our lustful desires, right? Uh, and it'll just increase our propensity to increase our lust, basically. So recently, my mom she sold up a 3-bedroom apartment and bought a 1-bedroom place, and there she is very satisfied. So as we get older, we also need to downsize. Previously when she had 5 kids, and she needed a bigger place, so she got a bigger place. So now all the kids have moved out and they have their own lives, so she needs to downsize, and this is what she did, right? So she got a smaller place, and in that way she can even maintain it, because the big house was too much for her to maintain as well. So therefore we need to think, as we get older, we need to increase our thoughts more, to be more Krishna conscious, rather than to think of so-called attachments in this material world, such as house, money, children, car, this, that, and the other. Right? We need to downsize and become closer to Krishna now. Uh, and also as we get older, we realize we've accumulated all these things for what? Most of the commodities that we accumulate, we don't even use. We think that, one day it'll come in handy, but the day never comes. And what actually comes? Actually, our life our time to leave this world comes faster than, all the things we're attached to in this material world. So this means we come again, if we are, if we think about all these things, when we leave our bodies, then we have to come back here into this material world. So better to give it up while we still have some strength, give all these things up, and just focus your mind on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So if we don't give it up, then Krishna will help us to give it up, right? He will make some very nice arrangements for us, because we are devotees. He will put us through so much of trials and tribulations that we come to our senses and realize that Krishna's hand is in all of this, and I need to give up all these attachments that I have, right? But if we don't accept, then we must continue experiencing hardships in our lives. We don't accept, all these hardships that Krishna is putting us through. And we say, no, but I can still make it. I can still make it. Then we have to suffer repeatedly in this material world. Just as, we see for the past few weeks, Maharaj Bhakti Chaitanya Swami has been speaking about Dhritarashtra, right, from the 13th chapter, and how attached he was to the kingly opulence, that he stayed at the cost of the Pandavas, who he tried to kill on various occasions. Vidura came, and Vidura imparted transcendental knowledge unto Dhritarashtra. He asked him to renounce and go to the forest instead of staying at home and eating the remnants of Bhima like a household dog. Now, how insulting is this, right? But it is there to give us a jolt, or give Dhritarashtra a jolt to come to reality. So sometimes we get a wake-up call like this, and Krishna gives us a jolt as well to bring us to reality that, hey, what am I doing? As I'm supposed to be advancing in Krishna consciousness, but yeah, I'm regressing, right? So instead of making progress in our spiritual life, we regress. So we need to take all these lessons that Krishna is imparting to us by giving us all these hardships to elevate ourselves in Krishna consciousness. Now, how long are we going to remain in this material world? lifetime after lifetime, are we going to remain in this material world? And then, it so happens that, terminated, our life is terminated, and then what happens? We come back into this material world and we start all over again. But if we become attached to Krishna and think of Krishna at the time of death, then we easily go back to the spiritual world. So it's not very easy to do, but we should, if we try for the rest of our lives from now till the time we leave our bodies, to think of Krishna more and more, and to basically, become more attached to Krishna rather than becoming attached to all these unwanted material desires, then we can make progress back home, back to Godhead. So I think I'll stop here. And if any of you have any questions or you'd like to contribute to this class, you're most welcome to do so. Hare Krishna. Anyone? Paramatma Prabhu? Anything?
Krishna Maharaj, no, thank you so much. I'm really taken aback by your dedication and the way you preach. It's very fluent and very you sound very convinced. And thank you so much for sacrificing your time in teaching us about Srila Prabhupada's books. Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji, thank you very much for wonderful class. I have a if is a family devotees, and of course husband and wife, they love each other.
You're basically breaking up. I can hardly hear you to say, or you have.
I can't understand. Yes, I want to ask you if is a family devotee, and of course husband and the wife, they love each other. This is not like a lust, and in the future Krishna maybe separates them and something like this, not to have too much attachment one for the other.
I think Hare Krishna Mataji left. I think she might join in very soon. Sorry, Mataji. If you can just hold on to your question, maybe Mataji will come back just now. Bhaktan Shamin, are you there? Hare Krishna Mataji?
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Yes, I am. Yes.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry, Mataji left us, but you're welcome to say something, and maybe when Mataji joins, you can just repeat the question. If she...
The same thing. I don't have a question, but she made a very powerful point. That lust is never satisfied. You cannot satisfy lust. And but if you turn that lust into love for Krishna, so if lust is so powerful, if lust is so powerful in the material world, and you change the lust into love for Krishna, and how powerful that can be, you know? That was a contribution I was going to make.
Hare Krishna Mataji, thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Sorry, Bhaktan Kodira Paul Mataji, sorry, your question. If you don't mind, Mataji, I'm not sure whether she
Hare
will join or not, but
I
we can
want
still.
to ask about family devotees, where husband and wife, of course, loves each other. This is not like a lust. And in the future, maybe Krishna to make them to advance, maybe separate them or something like this.
Hare Krishna Mataji, thank you so much. We'll ask Mataji when she joins, or we'll ask her to text the answer. That's a good question, Mataji. That's attachment for family member. We will ask her about that. Mataji, do you like to conclude with some kirtan? Anyone if you like to sing? Just a short kirtan. Bhaktan Kodura Paul Mataji, you like to sing Maha Mantra?
My voice is not well for something like this, Prabhu.
Yeah. Bhaktan Shamin Mataji, you like to sing?
Just a very short one, Prabhu, because my voice is terrible.
No, it's okay, Mataji, and then we'll conclude because Mataji did say we can end off now, so maybe she definitely got some internet issues.
Okay, maybe like I'll just do it for 30 seconds.
No problem, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, oh Rama Rama, oh Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Is that okay, Prabhu?
Hare Krishna Mataji, wonderful. Really amazing. Thank you so much, Mataji.
Sorry, Prabhu, my throat is...
It was perfect. Isn't Bhaktan Kodura Paul? What do you think of Mataji's kirtan?
Hare Krishna.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Mataji.
Yeah,
Thank
I think. Yeah, in our future classes, we'll be like, now we know we can ask Mataji to sing now.
Sorry, Prabhu. Sorry,
Yeah,
Mataji.
No, and the tune sounds very familiar. The tune sounds very familiar, Mataji.
Hey, yes, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Mataji, thank you so much. Yes. Okay. Oh, it's so nice. Okay. Mataji will conclude now then, and then we'll, if you can just text your question, and we'll ask Mataji to answer your. Yeah. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Vanchakalpa, pure start.
Hare Krishna, thank you very much.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.